Okay, we're going to get started. My name is Heather Burkart, and I am a certified Ayurvedic practitioner. And today, the presentation I have for you is called What's My Dosha? And if you're not familiar with the term dosha, it is an Ayurvedic term that refers to your Ayurvedic constitution. So if you don't know what that is, and why it matters, that's what we will talk about today. And I have a slide presentation for you to follow along, and then let's talk about what to expect here. Okay, so we'll do a quick look at Ayurveda and introduce the doshas, the three doshas. And we'll talk about the qualities of each of the doshas. These are like keywords for the doshas that are important to remember. And then these doshas relate to the three body types. These are Ayurvedic constitutions. And usually those body types are influenced by one of those three doshas. And we'll talk about how more than one dosha can be involved in your body type or constitution. And just know that I interchange the terms body type and constitution quite a bit. So just know that I'm talking about the same thing. And we'll talk about what that is in just a little bit if you're already confused. When we look at the doshas, we'll talk about also what the doshas look like when they're not in balance, and then how to balance the doshas. Then we'll take a dosha quiz that you can do on your smartphone. So you might, if you don't have it handy, you might want to take a minute, go get your smartphone because I'll share a QR code on your screen so that you can take this quiz online. Okay, and then I have some more resources for you and ways for us to keep in touch. All right. So let's get started. If you're new to Ayurveda, welcome. It is a traditional health system from India with roots in India. That's one of the oldest healthcare models still in use today. That's really an amazing statement because it is basically been used for generations upon generations. It is a holistic um, approach. And that means that Ayurveda addresses not just the physical body, also the mind and the spirit. And it sees those three components as connected and united. There are some very core Ayurvedic principles that I'd like to introduce here. So, like I mentioned, Ayurveda understands that the body, the mind, and the spirit are all connected, and that all levels of consciousness, these are all levels of consciousness that we experience as human beings, they all need support in natural ways, energetic ways to maintain optimal health and well being. And so, just like nature itself, our own nature needs a little bit of cultivation. Otherwise, as we know in nature, when things can go awry, they can go awry. And so, this Ayurvedic philosophy is about really being empowered in your health approach, as opposed to just your health being this thing that happens to you and that you're not involved. So Ayurvedic philosophy says that you are very much involved. And one of the ways that you're very much involved in your health and well-being is by your relationship with the doshas. Secondly, harmony with nature. Ayurveda principles teach us to follow the rhythms of nature by practicing healthy daily habits and monthly or even seasonal changes. For example, we're, firmly in the fall season now. It's cooler, it's drier, it's windy. And so these elements of our environment tend to influence us to make different changes. Like dressing warmer or eating soups and stews or, choosing, um, our daily habits may shift a little bit. So you're already doing this, and Ayurveda basically tells us that this is how we maintain balance with the doshas is by creating harmony with nature. How does Ayurveda work exactly? So Ayurveda does offer a personal approach. It suggests that you follow practices that support your own unique constitution of doshas or manage the doshas that have been imbalanced. So this is why it's so important to get to know the doshas, because one of them usually needs more help than others. And so in doing that, we can keep the balance between the doshas. All right. And it depends on your unique constitution or body type. There's lots of holistic approaches that Ayurveda uses. One of the two main ones is probably dietary and lifestyle. So what we eat on any given day can support your unique constitution or your doshas. How we live our life, what our daily habits and practices, these can help to support your unique constitution or imbalances. Moving on. We work with herbs as well. Herbal medicine is a big thing in Ayurveda, and it is a major way that we try to influence the doshas as well. So usually we're focused on diet and lifestyle first, and if herbs are needed, that's something we can also use as an ally to support the doshas. And then, of course, yoga and meditation play a role in self care practices as well. And not just doing any kind of yoga routine, but one that's attuned to your unique constitution or the doshas in your constitution that need the most TLC if you do have doshas that are imbalanced. So, learning how to do yoga in a very specific way that balances the doshas is one approach that Ayurveda uses, and also learning how to meditate, even to balance the doshas. So, in other words, everything we do, every approach that we use, the aim really in Ayurveda is to harmonize the doshas. And we're going to talk about what that means exactly. What does it mean to balance your doshas? Well, it's going to mean something different for everyone. So let's start with the 5 elements. We're going to start with the building blocks of the natural elements that are present within us and outside of us in our environment and in the universe. So we have Akash. Akash is ether. This is like the great vast space within which we exist. So this is a very expansive space. We have Vayu, which is air and the movement of air. Really important. This is the, hang on one second, I'm going to admit one more. This is movement, air and movement. And then we have Agni. Agni is fire. This is the element of warmth and heat. And then we have Jala. Jala is water, this fluid, watery element. And finally, Prithvi. Prithvi being earth, being very solid and stable. So all these different elements influence the doshas, and we'll talk about next how they come together to create the doshas. So we have ether and air coming together to create vata. And vata, the nature of vata dosha is very much like the wind. It's cold, it's dry, it's fast moving. We'll talk about those qualities now. So these are keywords that are really helpful to remind us of the energy of vata. And you know what? I digress. I should talk about the meaning of dosha being energy, the basic meaning of dosha being energy. So it is cold, dry, it is light, it's fast moving, it's irregular, and it's variable. And the Vata dosha lives in various sites of the body, the colon, the large intestine. So the doshas live in, all three doshas live in the gut and in the mind. But specifically, Vata is in the colon. It's in the long bones or joints, the pelvis, the hips, and the ears, interestingly enough. And then we have, here we go. So these are the gunas, the qualities of Vata. And you see their Sanskrit counterparts: cold, light, dry, subtle, mobile. And now you see underneath those the opposites. And we learn about the opposites because they are balancing for the qualities of Vata. So cold balances hot, light balances heavy, so on and so forth. The Ayurvedic principle is that like increases like and opposites balance. Let's move on to Pitta. Pitta, the Pitta dosha is created by the elements of fire and water. So you can think of, instead of being just pure fire, you can think about the combination of the two is more like acid. It has a liquidy nature, a spreading nature that's very much a fluid nature that's like water, but it's hot, right? And so it's not just fire, there's this fluid element there as well. Let's talk about the Pitta dosha. It's hot, sharp, oily. That water element manifests as oiliness. It's fast moving. Think about a forest fire and how quickly it can move through a forest. It's this spreading energy that can be pretty fast. If you think about inflammation in the body and how it can spread in the body, that is the power of the Pitta dosha. And in the digestion, Pitta is in your small intestine. It's in the liver, any of your blood organs. It's in the blood, right? So any blood organs, liver, gallbladder, spleen as well, the gray matter of the brain, and our eyes. Our eyes can be very sensitive to heat. Going back to the Vata dosha, the ears can be really sensitive for the Vata dosha, for Vata individuals. So here are those gunas of Pitta: hot, light, oily, subtle, mobile. Very, very similar to Vata, actually, outside of the fact that Pitta is hot and Pitta is oily. These are the only two, well, I shouldn't say the only, but these are the main gunas that are different from Vata. So they're actually fairly similar. It's just that Vata is cold and dry. So that's a really good way to remember the main differences between Vata and Pitta. They're both very light and ethereal doshas. So then we have the opposite gunas here as well. Cold, heavy. Oh, I switched those two words: dry, gross, and stable. So if you look up at, remember, like increases like, and opposites balance. So hot is balanced by cold, light by heavy, oily by dry, so on and so forth. So what you're learning about is this really important Ayurvedic principle that like increases like and opposites balance. And that will come in handy later when we're talking about how do we balance the doshas in diet and lifestyle. Those keywords are going to come into play once again. Now we have the kapha dosha that is made of the earth and water elements. Then we have kapha. And so when I think about earth and water together, I kind of think of mud. But you can think of anything that, that is pretty dense, but also has this really heavy energy of earth, but also has a little of this fluid quality as well. Let's talk about the kapha dosha. So it's cool and damp. It's moist. Um, it is heavy, slow moving energy. And when we use the term heavy in Ayurveda, we mean heavy in a good way. That means substantial or grounding. Not that that's a bad thing. And it's stable energy, right? And the sites of kapha are in the stomach, the lungs, the lymph nodes, the fluid of the joints, the mouth, throat, and tongue. So to review the kapha, you can think of kapha, the byproduct of kapha being mucus. And I included this picture here because when we have a lot of the kapha dosha in our system, it can show up as mucus. Okay. And with pitta, it's more, the byproduct more like bile, right? Something that's going to help break down our food. For vata, the byproduct you can think of as wind or gas, right? So these are all signifiers of the doshas in the body. So here are the gunas or qualities for kapha. Cool and heavy. Think about earth and water. Oily, cloudy, stable. Cool, I'm sorry, I have this incorrect here. This is a typo. Cool is balanced by hot, not cold. Heavy is balanced um, by light, right? So you get the idea here. These opposite gunas are balancing the inherent gunas of kapha. Okay, we're going to move on and talk about the body types. That's a really quick intro to the doshas. We're going to see, hopefully it makes more sense as we start to look at the doshas in the body. So we have body types or constitutions for each of the doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha. And in those body types, you'll find that basically that dominant energy is dominant in that individual, in the body mind system. Now, we can have body types where there is one primary dosha. There are body types where there are two. You may have a dual body type. Maybe it's vata and pitta, or pitta and vata. There is a presence, a strong presence of both of those doshas. Or maybe it's pitta kapha or kapha pitta, right? And usually the dosha that's named first is the one that's stronger in that individual, in that constitution. And we can have kapha vata or vata kapha. And also tridoshic is it does happen. It's these two are more, I would say, rare, at least in our culture, I would say. So vata pitta kapha is known as tridoshic, where all three are pretty balanced. Usually there is one that's leading the pack. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Take a breath. I know it's a lot of information. What is your dosha? In other words, how do you find out what is up with your Ayurvedic constitution? And how do you find, what does that say about you? All right, so first let's take a look at the constitution. So basically I like to use a pie chart, right? So think of your constitution as a pie chart. The dominant dosha of your constitution is going to take up most of that pie. So for example, a vata constitution or individual will have mostly vata in their constitution, as this pie suggests. I just made this up. Now we all have all three doshas. They're all manifest in our bodies in different ways, body and mind. So the pitta dosha is there and the kapha dosha is there, but they're not there in force. Does that make sense? So, and I forgot to mention that if you have questions, you can put them in the chat at the end when we have time for questions. I'll just go through and answer them. Um, so go ahead and do that so you don't have to hang on to them. So these are the ratio of the doshas. Everyone's is going to be a little different. It's like genetic information that's passed down from your parents. It's going to be very much influenced by your genes and the doshas that are passed down with your genes. So let's take a look at a dual constitution where you have two doshas that are pretty strong. Let's say this is a pitta vata constitution where we have pitta at 50% and vata at 40%. So still we see that one dosha is leading the pack. Usually that's what will happen. And vata is not close behind. So this is an example of a dual dosha. And maybe kapha is always there. All three doshas are always there in some kind of representation. It's just in a very small amount. So like I said, usually one will prevail. But what this means is that now you have two different doshas in your constitution that are going to need um, a little bit more attention, right? We're going to pay attention not just to one dosha in our constitution, but two. So getting to know those doshas really well and how they show up in your body. Okay, so I'd like to talk about the different body types and how the Vata dosha manifests in the body, the physical body, but also in the mind. So we talk about digestion because there are digestive types that are associated with the doshic types. But there's also things that express through our mind, things like speech and personality and even stress response. So we're going to talk about that for each of the body types or constitutions. So let's say that you have a vata constitution. That means that vata is really strongest in your constitution. It is the dominant dosha. So if that's true, it means that in your digestion, you may experience variable energy in your digestion. What does that mean? Well, it can mean maybe sometimes you're hungry, maybe sometimes you're not, right? You could skip a meal, or you could be starving. So there's really their appetite can be in flux. Same with thirst. They're extremely thirsty. They forget to drink, right? Also dryness. This idea of dryness, dry skin, dry eyes, dry lips, dry hair, dry everything. So dry is also an indicator for vata. And also in our digestion, this means that for elimination, we can be easily constipated. Constipation is basically a dry gut where things just aren't moving. Things get stuck. So we have dryness in our gut as well. But this specifically talking about digestion, it really means just not going as often. And so that can be a hallmark of a Vata body type. It's, you're easily constipated, but usually you're not going every day, right? You're usually skipping a day here or there. So let's move on to things like personality. Vata body types are known as being creatives, they're innovative, visionaries, and they thrive on new experiences. So they're really great with coming up with ideas. They're quick starters, maybe a little bit more challenge in terms of following things through or closing the loop or finding closure. And they just love new stuff. They want to try lots of different things and want to have lots of different experiences. So they can kind of get bored with follow through or this or that. So, they really want to be they are those creator types. that want to be in that first part of the creative process, which is really all about envisioning and innovating. In terms of speech, this is also how you can tell a Vata body type. They can be chatty and bubbly. They love to talk, and sometimes they can just blurt things out because it's hard for them to contain their energy. So they can be quite chatty. And then in terms of stress response, sorry for the typos here, folks, um, they might experience more anxiety and fear. Anxiety and fear is related to the Vata dosha. Okay, let me just um, take a look at this question. Yes, Tracy, we can go over that about the different phases of life. So I can do that right now because while we're talking about body types. Um, so the Vata season of life is later life, right? So for women, I work with women specifically. For women, that's usually the menopausal years onward, right? So we're talking about around roughly 50 years plus. So yes, this is a time when we may experience some of these things that lets us know that the Vata dosha is there. And it is increased and even aggravated. We could have more dryness. We could have more variability with our digestion and elimination. And we could have more anxiety. Another way this can show up is having trouble sleeping because the mind has a hard time winding down, right? So then we have sleep issues as well. And so we have the seasons of life, and then we have the seasons, like for example, we're in the fall season, and that is the Vata season. So think about what's happening in the environment right now. And if we go back to the gunas, let me see if I can go back and find that list of gunas. It's going to take me too long to get there. It is cool, cold even. It is dry. It is windy. You hear the crackly leaves when you're walking. Your skin feels more dry. Your sleep may feel more unsettled. And, our minds in general may feel more settled. So those are the calling cards of Pitta or Vata. If you think back to those key words, the gunas, those are the calling cards of the doshas. Now, that's a great question, Tracy. Thank you. And so we can move on to Pitta. Now, Pitta is, again, similar and very different, that it is hot, right? And remember, this is the fire dosha. So in our digestion, if this is your body type, Pittas have a very strong appetite because they have that fiery element. It's one of the main signifiers of a Pitta person, right? And I'm going to interchange words now. Pitta person, Pitta body type, constitution. I apologize for that ahead of time. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more relatable. So a very strong appetite and strong thirst as well. These folks need to feed the fire in their gut quite regularly, and if not, they can become fairly unhappy people, right? So it's very important. Food is very important for them. You can tell a Pitta person because if you're having a lunch meeting at noon, they're the ones that make sure that they have something with them to eat, or they're the ones looking at the watch wondering when's the next time they can run out and grab some food. And then also because of their that water element that they have a lot of movement in their gut. There's a lot of input and a lot of output as well. So there's frequent elimination. These folks go, numerous times even in one day, right? And yes, Ayurveda, we love talking about poop. We talk about poop because we love talking about digestion, and elimination is part of that conversation. So that's just something that you have to get used to. But it's also very liberating, like, yeah, we can actually learn a lot about our patterns of elimination. So yes, and this is really important to know. It's part of your body type. So let's take a look at other ways that it manifests in the body mind system. With speech, these people can be more direct, clear, to the point, also very joyful, enthusiastic. Like they're really great cheerleaders. Personality wise, these are the leaders, the teachers, the taskmasters. They help us get things done, and they love to be challenged. They love competition, right? And so they love challenging themselves. They love competing with themselves and others. They're usually up to that task no matter what. They are our go-getters, and they're better at follow through because they have that task orientation. They love to check things off the list. Unlike our Vata people who like to be there at the beginning and then they get bored and then you kind of like move on to the next thing. That's your Pitta people who are going to see things through. And then their stress response, not surprisingly, is going to be anger and irritability because they have that fiery nature. That is what they will lead with, is anger. So don't take it personal. That's just their fire talking. In terms of seasons, take a big guess. It's summertime. Summer because that's when it is hot. And we also get a taste of that at the end of spring, right? When it's starting to get warmer. In terms of the life seasons, um, we are looking at midlife. And what I mean by midlife is everything from early adulthood through all the way through, like, for example, for women up until menopause or 50s, right? And so we have this midlife time that's very active. We are building our lives, we're building our families, we're working on our careers, we're going to school, we're training, it's very, very active. We are actively building our lives, whatever that looks like. Everyone does it a little bit differently, but it's this very, very active stage. Does that make sense? Okay. Kapha. Let's move to the Kapha constitution and body type. Very different, because instead of these very light, airy, fast moving energies, we have earth and water, right? And so this influences everything about the body, mind, spirit system of a Kapha person. In the digestion, we have a low appetite. The appetite is just not as strong. Right. They're the folks that first thing in the morning they can do with a cup of coffee, and they probably don't need to eat for hours. Okay. That fire in the gut is just not there. And then very slow elimination too. Regular but slow. Right? So you think about the slowness of earth, right? The slowness that it takes for the seasons to change and this and that. So a key word here is slow and low. Low fire, low appetite, even low thirst, because of the presence of the water element, a strong presence. There's not as much water intake that's needed. Whereas our other two types tend to be fairly thirsty because they're dry. They tend to be drier. In terms of speech, they're not as chatty. They have fewer words, well chosen words. They can be more selective when they choose to talk, or not, maybe not as social, more quiet. Personality, they can be loyal, reliable, caring. They love comfort and familiarity. Comfort and familiarity. So instead of being our go-getters and our quick starters, they're the ones that are just hanging out with a cup of tea somewhere doing their own thing. Okay. So, and you know people like this. You probably have people like this in your life. But when you need them, they are there for you. They are there. They are your teddy bear, your rock, your anchor, your pillar of strength, the person you go to when you need comfort and caring. So these are those more maternal types or paternal types. Stress response is a tendency towards sadness and a tendency to withdraw, right? So it's this heavy nature that can bring our mood down. Now, that said, all that said, the doshas can do those things because it's just the nature of your constitution, and that's just how you're showing up in life. On the other hand, doshas can be imbalanced so that they show up, um, in places maybe where they're not expected. So maybe you are a vata person, but interestingly enough, you have these imbalances that seem to represent a different dosha. What is up with that? So then we have these doshas that are like bad actors. We have doshas really have two sides. They have a light side and they have a dark side. So they have the side that is very helpful and they are our allies. And then they have this darker side, a negative side that can be a destructive force and an unhelpful force. And then they can create symptoms in the body mind system. And we're not enjoying that as much, right? So it's a different relation. We have a different relationship with doshas that are increased, that are out of balance. So this is a chart that I came up with. When the doshas become imbalanced, it's usually because they've increased beyond their healthy range. So now I'm using I love charts. Sorry if you can tell, I am a pitta person. I love charts. So here you can see that the healthy range of vata is this pinkish area. And then when vata increases for whatever reason, diet, lifestyle, what have you, emotions, stress, then we have vata increasing beyond its healthy range. And this is what causes symptoms. So if you think back to that pie chart, that's where the doshas are in their happy homes. Once they seep out, when there's too much of that particular dosha or energy, and they start to seep out of their happy home, and we have this imbalance, this increase, and that is when we start to see these darker sides of the doshas that create symptoms. So going back to the body types, those things that we see happening in the mind and the gut and the speech, that's all normal for the body types. That's all normal for the constitution. But when symptoms become acute, then we know that the doshas are in fact imbalance because they're just getting our attention more so. So same for pitta and same for kapha. So we're really looking at a vata individual here, maybe a vata pitta individual, and all three of their doshas are increased here. But because vata is increased the most here, they may have more dryness, coldness, constipation, anxiety, so on and so forth. And because pitta is increased, maybe they're also having some signs of inflammation as well. And so this is how we can see how, that all of the doshas can become imbalanced in their own right and then bring their own manifestation. So let's take a look at imbalances. And again, these are more acute. These are not just like, oh, I'm a dry person, so I only poop every other day, right? This is when like we haven't pooped forever. We are chronically constipated. So these are chronic and acute situations. So in the digestion, we have gas, bloating, digestive pain. Again, maybe not just happening for Vata individuals. If this is happening for other individuals, it's because Vata is imbalanced. Now, I should say here that Vata types are more prone to this because they have stronger Vata energy, more air in their gut. So they have a higher propensity to experience these symptoms. Again, we talked about dryness, dry everything, dry skin, dry eyes, dry hair, dry brittle nails. So dryness shows up everywhere, not just in the gut, but in the skin. In elimination as well, hemorrhoids is secondary to constipation. That's no fun, right? So on top of constipation, now we have hemorrhoids because constipation has become chronic. And we're not just feeling a little unsettled and having disrupted sleep every now and again. We have full on insomnia, right? We're having difficulty falling asleep. So these are Vata imbalances. And just to be clear, these are more acute and chronic symptoms. When it's part of your constitution, just a natural part of your constitution, they're pretty mild. They're manageable. You can manage them. Imbalances are harder to manage. So let's talk about balancing Vata right away. What do? Let's think back to the keywords. So if we want to balance the Vata, we want to think about those therapeutic opposites, those opposite qualities in all these different areas that will help to basically calming the Vata dosha. So with diet and foods, we're looking for warm, cooked, nourishing foods. Does that make sense? Um, and this is really interesting because usually it's my Vata clients who lean towards raw and cold foods, not knowing that those foods actually further imbalance their Vata dosha. So we're using the opposites here to balance. And then cooked foods are just going to have more of that water element, soups and stews, and then nourishing foods, like not salads. Salads typically are not seen as a nourishing food. I mean, it really depends on what you're putting a bunch of cooked foods on your salad and maybe, but in general, Ayurveda recognizes, and this is proven by science, scientific research, that food is better or nutrients are better extracted from your food when it is cooked. Digestion just works better. Assimilation of nutrients works better when foods are cooked. Okay, and we don't have to work so hard to unlock the nutrients from, for example, vegetables are so dense. To unlock the nutrients out of the plant fibers is really hard for your gut. Okay, rabbit hole there, definitely in terms of diet and foods. I could do a workshop on each one of these, so I'm just going to try to I'm going to try to breeze through. In terms of self-care, just listen for the keywords here. Listen for the keywords that are opposites. Hydrate, moisturize, and self-massage, not just with any oil, but oils that balance the Vata dosha. This is one way that you can really nourish the Vata dosha, especially if the skin is very dry. So Vata oil is these are Ayurvedic oils that usually incorporate some kind of herbs, a bunch of herbs that balance the Vata dosha. I'm not going to get into those today. But if you look for Ayurvedic companies do this all the time, they'll make oil specifically for the doshas. If you know what dosha you're working with, you'll know which oil to look into. But certainly if you have dry skin, a Vata oil can be very helpful. In terms of routines, regularity is really important. Remember the keyword variable? That keyword variable, that is a nature of the Vata dosha. So the opposite of that is regularity and consistency. So this is how lifestyle medicine is used to balance the Vata dosha. So regular schedule, but especially around meals and sleep. Meals and sleep are the most important routines and healthy habits that we can cultivate every day And for the Vata person, working on these regular habits can be very, very soothing for the Vata dosha. So I think people tend to focus here a lot on diet and food. And that's great. I think it's a great entryway. I think routines and self-care in terms of lifestyle medicine is so much powerful than people realize. They're also harder. I think that might be part of it. Diet and foods are fairly that's a fairly accessible approach. Whereas routines, that takes longer. Sometimes that can take months, if not longer, to really work with incorporating healthy routines. Sleep is so, so, so important for Vata because sleep is letting the body rest, right? Think of that fast moving energy. So, because of that mobility quality of Vatas, they need the most sleep. And so, because of this emphasis on sleep, bedtime self care practices are super duper important to put an emphasis on getting good sleep through bedtime self-care, whatever it might be. Maybe it's a relaxing bath, maybe it's some yoga stretching, whatever it is, it's something to help wind down and staying away from screens right before you go to sleep or staying up late or any of that. Okay, on to pitta. All right, so their digestion, of course, is when there is too much pitta or fire energy in the gut, it may show up this way: hyperacidity, heartburn, burning digestion, just a sense of excess heat in the gut. Okay, now this is a problem because a lot of pitta people are um, attracted by spicy foods, and this is a problem. And why? It's because it's their nature. Fire is their nature, so it's natural to be attracted to that. Don't feel bad about that. However, if you overdo it, then you can do yourself that's not going to do you any favors. In fact, it's just you already have strong fire in your gut. It's going to build on that. And so we see a lot of hyperacidity because of that. And when we have a lot of fire in the gut, that means that it can lead to systemic inflammation. It doesn't just stay contained in your gut. Eventually, it will leak out of the gut and interfere in other places in the body and show up as inflammation, like skin. Okay, that's our next category here. You can see how pitta people may have more oily skin, they may have more rashes and blemishes, they might break out. So you'll see this excess heat come out through the skin. And that is a good thing. That's our body trying to manage the excess heat. But it's also a good way to tell us, like, whoa, I'm on fire inside, help me. So the skin is just letting us know that there is fire inside that needs to be managed. Okay, in terms of elimination, again, there's a lot of high input for pitta people because they need to eat more. And so there's more output, but then we also have the propensity for loose stools, which is really not fun. So if you're a pitta person and you're having a lot of loose stools, this is not just, oh, I'm pitta, I have a lot of fire. This is your gut telling you, I am managing a fire in your gut. So whatever you're doing, please stop. Yeah, that's your gut being like, this is not cool. This is too much. Like you'll have some trigger foods, like, yeah, we'll send you to the bathroom. But if it's happening, again, it's acute and it's chronic, that's your body saying, like, oh, yeah, this dosha is out of control. Okay, now let's move on to sleep. So pitta people, because they drive themselves pretty hard, they can be okay with falling asleep. They tend to burn the candle at both ends. So they're the ones staying up late, working on work projects or doing this or doing that, or getting their pleasure time late at night. Sleep is still really important for pitta people. Again, they're more light, airy energy that need that earth energy of sleep. So what will happen with them is more so their sleep will be disrupted. So they'll sleep like the dead, maybe the first few hours of the night, and then they'll be up early in the morning and they're like, what happened? I was exhausted. I was getting great sleep. Like, what is going on? So that is more common for pitta people. They could not so much insomnia, but it's a disrupted sleep. Um, this is really common. We were talking about the seasons of life as women are entering menopause or in the perimenopausal stage. They'll notice this because a lot of people will have pitta imbalances as they enter into menopause. So really, it's all that excess pitta that is asking to be managed as we wrap up our reproductive years. Okay, moving on. I hope this is making sense because I'm flying through and I want to get to this. I want to get to our quiz that's going on. Okay. All right, kapha imbalances can show up as sluggish, slow digestion. There's a really heavy feeling in the gut, the sense of just not being attracted by food at all and feeling really sluggish, right? So that is kapha digestion. Um, Hair, skin can be oily, there could be dandruff. We can even have problems with fungus. Um, and then in terms of elimination, it can be there's a lot, there can be a lot of it. It's bulky, it's mucousy. So there's an essence of this excess earth and water element in elimination. And then in terms of sleep, they have an opposite problem. They have a harder time waking up and oversleeping. So I apologize for cutting this one short. I do want to move on. So when we talk about balancing kapha, again, think back to those keywords. In diet and foods, very different. They need light, dry foods. Remember that the qualities are heavy and dense and um, cool. So they need light, dry, and hot foods. So cooked foods, they can tolerate spice, certainly. So a little bit of some spice in their foods can be helpful. In terms of self-care, instead of like pouring on the oil, we might use a lot less, and certainly an oil that is more appropriate for kapha. So that's going to have herbs in it that are balancing for the kapha dosha. And then things like dry brushing and dry heat will be better than moist heat for our kapha types. And then in terms of routines, for them actually, they can get kind of stuck in their routines. And so for them, change can be a good thing to try different things. So changing it up a little bit for kapha types can be really, really helpful to make the energy lighter. And then in terms of sleep, because they can be really long sleepers, to try working on waking up earlier for daily movement. Once they start sleeping into the kapha time of day, and we'll talk about that next, they can feel really, really groggy. Anyone that's going to sleep into the kapha time of day is going to have that really earthy grogginess. And that's basically if you don't wake up before 6 a.m., you could start to feel really, if you're waking up at like 8 or 9, certainly you can start feeling really groggy in the morning. Okay. All right. I kind of whizzed through that last one a little bit. I apologize, but I really want to get to the dosha quiz. And so if you have a smartphone handy, you can take a picture of that QR code to take my Ayurvedic Constitution quiz. It's called the Self-Discovery Dosha Quiz. So give that a shot. And even if you're listening to the recording, you might want to pull this up on your phone and it'll be the best way. Yeah, you kind of need to take a picture of it with your phone. So hopefully you can take a look at this presentation on your computer. So you can take a pic with your phone and take the quiz. And if you have any problems with this, let me know in the chat. I'm seeing if there's anything going on in there, not as of yet. So we'll take you to my website, my client portal. My client portal is called Practice Better. It is HIPAA compliant, so you're not just putting out your information out there into cyberspace. It is a secure HIPAA compliant site that's specifically for practitioners. Okay, so take the dosha quiz. You'll see that there are lots of questions about your physical nature, your mental nature, your personality. And then what will happen is I will get back to you within a day or two, probably it's a Friday. So probably by Monday, you'll have your results ready to go. But you'll get that from me from a practitioner that can help you connect the dots of your constitution. So let me just check in with the chat, make sure we're okay. And then if you're not able to make this work, when I send out the recording, I'll include the quiz, the link to the quiz, so you can check that out. Okay. And then if anyone's taking the quiz right now and you have questions, just put them in the chat, and I'll keep an eye out to see if anyone has any questions. Okay. I did want to put out there some resources for you. You can go to my website and visit my blog. I've got lots of information, lots of articles there. I do focus on women's wellness. So many of the articles are about women's wellness and self-care practices. So you can go check out things on my blog. You can check out my videos on my YouTube channel. My website is herwellbeing.com. So it's the Her Wellbeing YouTube channel. And on my website, I have some free courses. So you can go to my website, herwellbeing.com, Ayurvedic-courses/Ayurvedic-courses to check out some free courses that you can do online. And that's the courses are under my services tab. And then there's also an online community that I host called Life of Balance. I see there's someone in the chat. Let me just go there in a minute. Okay. Okay. That was Tracy saying thank you. All right, Tracy, it was good to have you here. So Life of Balance is my online community where you can peruse lots of different Ayurvedic topics depending on what interests you: diet, lifestyle, self-care, yoga, meditation, astrology. It's all there for you to peruse. Videos, tutorials, articles. It's really like just a playground, an Ayurveda playground for those who are relatively new to Ayurveda and want to learn how to build a holistic lifestyle step by step. So that you can find on my website as well under programs. I'm going to breeze through these and just end with this slide of keeping in touch. Here's my information. If you want to get in touch, I should be sending out the recording, if not by the end of the day, sometime over the weekend. So stay tuned for that. And you can send me, you can reply to that email that I send out, or you can email me at hello@herwellbeing.com. Don't forget to go to my website, herwellbeing.com, where there are a lot of free resources to keep learning about all of this, the doshas, your constitution, so on and so forth. Okay, we're pretty much at time, but I do want to make some time for questions if anyone has any. I'll hang out just for a little bit, but I will, let's see here. I will stop recording at this point. If there's no questions, then we'll just wrap it up. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to the recording, okay. I'm going to stop, and I hope to see you soon. This event was part of Ayurveda Week, and please check out our website, ayurvedawisconsin.com. There are more, or I'm sorry, .org. On our events page, there are just a couple more events. I think there's one tonight, and also tomorrow as well. So go to the association's webpage, Ayurveda Association of Wisconsin, and go to events to see what else we have lined up as we wrap up Ayurveda week. All right, everyone, take care and thanks for being here. This is Heather signing off. Bye-bye.